Hello everyone and welcome. Seme and I are very happy to welcome you as a co-host on this new RT Friday session. Today we will have a good guest, if I can say. We will have also a nice topic, cognitive CRM architecture, AI-driven healthcare system design, presented by Ashwin. This session will explain how CRM can move from a simple database to a smart and proactive platform for healthcare. We will look at the key ideas such as microservices, event-driven design, cloud-native tools, AI integration, data mesh, and so on, while staying compliant with HIPAA in USA and GDPR in Europe and some local health data law in your country, maybe. You will also see a real example like how to reduce hospital readmission and make clinical work easier. Please write your question during the session. We will answer them at the end, maybe on the floor. So, Seme, I will let you present the Archi Friday.
Thank you very much, Rodrigue, and welcome to our special guest for today, Ashwin. Thank you very much for joining us for those sessions. And
Nice.
once again, thank you for accepting the invitation. We know that in terms of location, we have a difference in the time. So thank you very much for accepting and for being involved in this event. So welcome everyone, and thank you very much for you too, our followers, for being in the Archie Fridays series. For those who are joining us for the first time, just a little and quick reminder of the Archie Fridays topic. So this is our dedicated platform where we bring together architects, engineers, and thought leaders to discuss the latest trends and innovations shaping the field of IT. And it is very special as a space for learning, for sharing, and also networking in a concise and focused format. So, for the session we will have today, transforming healthcare with AI-powered CRM architectures, Ashwin will go deep dive into the details of the sessions. We'll share with us very interesting insights related to how you can use and implement your CRM architectures based on artificial intelligence, very hot topic. Once again, thank you very much for sharing those insights with us, Ashwin, and for being in this session. So without taking more time in the introductions, Mike is yours, Ashwin. So I will let you present your topic. And of course, we will monitor all the questions that we may have from the audience and share them during our session. So it's for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Semi. Thank you, Rodrigue, for co-hosting this with me. Let me start with a simple question. What do we expect from our healthcare systems today? For most part, they collect and store large amounts of data in forms of lab test, imaging results, or doctor's note, which gets piled onto the electronic health record or the EHR. But here's the problem: these systems are passive. They sit there like a giant data bank, waiting for somebody to come and query and dig out the information that we need. Now, imagine instead of just being a data bank, the system acted like a true clinical partner. Imagine it noticed patterns or predicted risks or actually recommend the doctors with timely suggestions. That's what I mean by cognitive CRM architecture. Uh, let's take a different analogy. In a layman language, think about the difference between a phone book like Yellow Pages from yesteryears or the smartphones of today. The phone book from yesteryears, they listed thousands of names and numbers, but it didn't tell you like which call you shouldn't miss today, for example. On the other hand, the smartphone goes far beyond just storing those contacts. It reminds you of your meetings. Maps suggest you the fastest way to go to your destination. Blocks spam calls. So healthcare can also follow that same evolution. Instead of just storing the patient history or what's in the past, they should also predict who is at the risk of readmission, for example, or b alert the providers or the clinicians to adverse medication and interactions, or even remind the patients to take their medications before complications develop. It's already happening. I can think of three case study examples which I research and which I will point to point refer in my next 5 minutes. One is the Paris Hospital Systems, APHP. In 2016, they used the predictive models, deployed microservices to forecast their admissions. With the goal, they allowed their team to staff more efficiently. Second case study, Minnesota-based Mayo Clinic. They started their proof of concept way back in 2024, right up till 21. They used edge computing to deploy a condition called sepsis prediction directly at the bedside on their devices, with the goal of cutting the time to alerts down from minutes to seconds. The third example I can think of is from a hospital system based out of Central or Northern California near Sacramento region. And in their formal publication in 2017, they informed that they developed predictive engines to reduce the 30-day readmissions. And they collected the data for this from 2009 to, I believe, 2015. We'll go into these examples. We'll deep dive this a little bit more as we move forward. But the common theme here is these examples, they are the real examples of the passive systems becoming proactive partners. So when I say that we are moving from passive health repository to proactive clinical partners, that is the transformation I'm talking about. And no, it's not about replacing the clinicians that I'm talking today. It's about amplifying their services so that they can focus less on searching through data, looking through the pile of information, or query the system, and they can focus more on caring for the patients in real time. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Ashwin Bajoria, a University of Massachusetts at Boston alum, a project manager by profession, and I have experience working in regulated domains, finance, healthcare, work, and different so far and so forth. I specialize in cybersecurity, governance, workflow automation. And the topic I'll be presenting today is something I'm getting more passionate about: healthcare, and how can we transform healthcare systems from being just passive collectors of information into proactive clinical partners. I call this transformation as cognitive CRM architecture. So as we walk through this architecture today, I would like you to focus and think of one central theme. We are not just designing technology, we are designing clinical partners. And clinical partners, they don't just sit back and observe, they engage, they anticipate, and they help you succeed. And that is the journey I'm taking you on today. Okay, so let's talk about start by talking about the core problem. Healthcare today, they are drowning in data, but starving for insights. I repeat, they are starving for insights. Every day, terabytes of information are produced from lab systems, from imaging devices, from prescriptions, clinical notes, wearable devices, even patient portals. They just store the information, what happened in the past. They don't tell us what is about to happen. They're just like a rear view mirrors, useful, but not enough. If you try to navigate the road ahead, they lack insights. The problem is that most our systems are reactive. Let me give you an example. Let's say a patient walks in with a heart failure. And over the past year, this patient has been admitted like 3 times. The CRM records all of that perfectly. Everything is fine. But does it ever raise a flag? Hey, this patient is at the risk of being readmitted in the next 30 days. That's the limitation of reactive systems. Okay, let's think of it in a different analogy. Think about the last time we watched a detective show. A detective has its walls covered with paper cuttings, with photos, trying to connect the dots between different cases. That's what our doctors are forced to do every single day. Except instead of murder cases, it's lab reports, it's vitals, it's medical histories, etc. So information is all there, but it's all scattered and it's painfully reactive. So the traditional systems in the healthcare simply act as data banks, as I just mentioned. They just store the information from the past or up till present, like the last visit, the last lab, the last procedure. But what they don't do is they don't look forward. They don't say, okay, based on the patient's weight trend or any lab markers, they are heading towards, let's say, a condition, kidney failure, in 3 months, unless the clinicians intervene. Or they don't say, this medication combination is likely to cause a dangerous reaction if prescribed together for this set of patient group. And that, my friends, is where our opportunity lies. And this is where we can bring value as a technology. Let's reimagine this. In a cognitive world, the system does not wait to be asked. It continuously monitors streams of data, identifies meaningful trends, and surfaces insights proactively. For instance, the doctor having to run a query. Show me the list of all the patients with, let's say, kidney problems. The system itself identifies and sends an alert. Okay, this particular patient's vitals and lab values are trending towards kidney failure risk. So the clinicians get the notifications in real time right in their workflow with context and with recommendations. So behind the scenes, the system, what it does, it flags the patient silently. It sends the alert hours before the symptoms become critical. Think of it just like an earthquake scenario, wherein you develop an intelligent algorithm on the basis of tectonic plates reading to warn us few minutes in advance. Imagine what it would do to people in big cities, in high rises. They can take necessary precautions and save lives. So instead of waiting for crisis to happen, the system steps in early and helps us and prevents the disaster and prevents from losses. Okay, so to make this transformation a reality, let's say I just have my system here ready with me. I cannot just sit back and just sprinkle some AI on top of it and call it a day. We need to build strong architectural foundations that can support this intelligence which we are proposing to make and grow it at scale. Think about it as a skyscraper. You don't just add floors to an old wooden house. You need deep foundations that withstand pressure. You need steel frameworks. You need flexible materials and so forth that adapt to the conditions, right? So, what are our solutions? Well, right here. The first foundation, microservices. So think of instead of having one big giant monolithic system that tries to do everything, we break this super intelligent system into small modular services. You might have, let's say, a service dedicated to risk prediction. You might have another for medication safety checks, another for patient engagement alerts. Each of these systems, they run independently. They can be updated independently, and they communicate within the system, this universe, through the well-defined APIs. The second system is the event-driven architecture. Okay, so in healthcare, I would say timing is everything. Don't you agree? When the lab results or any patient vitals come in, it needs to trigger multiple downstream analysis right away. We need to leverage technology to make sure that one event, like let's say a vital sign, a blood glucose or troponin levels being elevated, can simultaneously trigger different workflows like risk scoring, like medication reviews, or provider notifications, and that too without delay. So that is the event-driven architecture, which we would dive deep in the later slides. The third foundation is the cloud-native design. Healthcare is not uniform. Some hospitals are small, others are big. So the cloud-native system provides the elasticity here. Take, for example, this flu season. When the patient loads spike, the system can automatically scale up the resources. And when the volumes are lower, vice versa, it scales back down the cost and saving costs and maintaining efficiency. And more importantly, these systems should also allow multi-region deployment for low latency and support serverless functions for high-intensity AI tasks. Let me give you a practical example. During the pandemic, many healthcare system providers ran this predictive models for the infection spread, for the ICU demand, or for the ventilator needs. Those models required huge computing power, sometimes at unpredictable peaks. But without these cloud native system design running at and these models running at scale, this would have been nearly impossible. So these three pillars are really important. And finally, I would want to add on a side note that we need to also bake in the security and compliance into this foundation, because the healthcare deals with very sensitive kind of data. And for that, API gateways can use centralized authentication to deal with regulatory requirements and data locality for HIPAA and GDPR. So those are the three pillars and security things that we need to talk about. Okay, let's talk about microservices now, because this is one of the most important enablers of the cognitive CRM. If you ever work with traditional healthcare and IT systems, you would know that they're usually massive, a monolithic structure. They try to do everything. They do patient records, they do billings, they do labs, scheduling, everything, all wrapped up in this one big, huge block of code. The problem is with the approach itself. It is rigid. And if you want to say make change at one place, chances are that you are breaking something somewhere else. And when you try to introduce AI or machine learning to this kind of environment, you risk facing disruption. So that's where we have microservices, wherein we break down the system into smaller modular services, each responsible for its own specific function. Let's say one service might handle a readmission prediction. Another service might handle, let's say, drug interaction checks or monitor vital signs in real time. Each of these systems would be independent, but they would be connected through APIs. If you want to improve or update a service or a system, you can do that without disturbing the entire system as a whole. You need not rehaul the entire system. So let's fall back to that old example, the Paris hospital system, wherein they ran a proof of concept for running the predictive models for patient readmissions. And they did this in 2016 for their 4 departments. To add monitored admission patterns. And based on this, they generated risk scores. All of this they did without rewriting or interfering with the existing main patient record. So why does it really matter for the CRM? The answer is because the health system is constantly evolving. New diseases are emerging, new drugs are approved, clinical guidelines are issued. And with microservices, you don't need to build the system every time something changes. You just add or update the service. That's the power of microservices in healthcare AI, the ability to innovate without disruption. All right. So, oops. Yeah. So now let's take a next step, event-driven architecture. This is where the thing starts to feel really alive. This is the heartbeat of the system, and I'll tell you why. Healthcare is full of critical events. For example, let's pick up any event. A lab result comes in, that's an event, or a patient heart rate spikes, or a new prescription is added. Each of these systems might look small in isolation, but together, if you look in totality, they paint the story of the patient health. These events often just get stored in the traditional system in a database until somebody goes in and they pokes and queries the system looking for the information we need. But in an event-driven system, every event is a trigger, and it would set off immediate intelligent response workflows across the system. So here is how it works under the hood. Let's say pick one event. Lab system comes in showing elevated blood glucose levels or troponin levels, which might indicate, let's say, a condition, heart damage. In an event system, the moment this event is triggered, it publishes this information onto the event bus. And from there, multiple microservices, they sprawl into action all simultaneously. Let's say one service, they would run a risk assessment and determine the likelihood of a cardiac event. Another might just run medications for any contraindications, right? And third microservice, they can just alert the cardiology team, and they can have everything ready in the background. And because this is all event driven, everything is happening in parallel, in real time, and that too in milliseconds, without having a human to go dig in for the data. One real example I'll share. In the US emergency departments, they leverage event-driven architecture to monitor incoming lab values for vital signs for a condition called sepsis. So when a right combination of signal appears, say a rising heart rate or a dropping blood pressure or abnormal white cell count changes, the system triggers immediate sepsis alert workflow. So doctors do not have to pull up charts or and compare the numbers manually. The event-driven system does all the work for you and surfaces the insight. And this is where the system turns from passive to proactive, and it's responsive. Okay, now if the event-driven architecture was the heartbeat of the system, the predictive analytics engine is the brain. This is where the data is really transformed into meaningful insights. The predictive engine is designed to process this vast amount of data and detect patterns and then generate predictions for the clinicians and the doctors for us. I would say it's not just about the brute computational power. It's also being about giving reasons or being explainable to those clinicians, being reliable, being safe in that clinical environment. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have a whiteboard and we are ingesting data from multiple sources. I'll call this whiteboard or this plate as a semantic layer. I, as a system, am ingesting data from multiple sources. Let's say lab systems, vitals, or monitors, EHRs, or patient portals, or wearable devices. There could be many different points wherein I can ingest the data to this semantic layer. So the engine applies, our engine would apply its engineering to extract the key variables and the trends, the medication histories, or the comorbidity scores. And then B, it will jump to next step to apply appropriate predictive models and which it would have generated from its registry. Maybe it's logistic reasoning for one patient group, or it could be neural network for another. Then it would jump to the next step, C, I would call predictions, which is the likelihood of an event, let's say readmissions, and generate the confidence intervals along with that. And then fourth, continuously monitor itself for the drift. A big part for in this entire process is transparency. uh, Clinicians, they don't want this big black box or this big system to just tell them what to do. They really hate it. They want to understand why this particular recommendation or insight, why this was popped up on the screen. So that's where the explainability or reasoning layers like Shape or Lime would be integrated so that the systems can say, hey, we flag this patient as high risk because, or here is the reason. Let's say because the patient has rising creatine levels or recent weight gain trends. So that's the kind of transparency that really builds trust with the clinicians. Think about of the airline industry, where when an autopilot suggests a maneuver, but the pilot still sees the reasoning and has the final say. The predictive engine works in a similar way. It augments the clinical judgment rather than replacing it. So that is the power of clinical predictive analytics engine, and when designed with intelligence and responsibility. Okay, so now let's take a step back. We discussed the three pillars, right? We discussed the microservices. We discussed the event-driven architecture, which is the heart of the system. And we also discussed in the last slide the prediction analytics engine, the brain. Then what? We integrate all these good things and we infuse this into the systems. Now, predictions are only useful when they reach the right people at the right team. So here is where the decision support system would come into play. Example, let's say you're a doctor working inside an EHR. You're writing a prescription for a new drug. In a traditional flow, what would have happened is while writing, you have to leave the workflow, maybe run a query, or let's say check a reference. It really adds to the load. But in the new cognitive system, the decision support is already integrated into the workflow of the clinician directly. So as and when the doctors or the clinicians, they are writing the prescription, the system automatically checks for interactions and surfaces an alert right there and then. And this under the hood is done using the standards like FHIR, CDS hooks, and so forth. FHIR ensures interoperability so that various systems can communicate with the CRM like EHR and HIEs, etc. CDS hooks, on the other hand, lets the decision support to plug right into the EHR workflow to deliver the contextual advice without making the clinicians jump through various hoops. So that is the CDS hooks. Another great enabler here is the Smart on the FHIR apps. These are nothing but small modular applications that plug right into the electronic health records securely. They access the patient data and they generate and deliver specific insights based on the specialty. For example, let's say a cardiology app that automatically analyzes the, let's say, echo results and surfaces the guideline-based treatment on those recommendations. Similarly, we can have one for oncology, right? So behind the scenes, there is also a clinical knowledge base, often represented by a graph database that stores all these medical parlance, medical ontologies, and guidelines. They allow the system to understand not just the data points, but relationships also between the clinical concepts. For example, it can understand that, let's say, hypertension is related to cardiovascular disease, and a certain drug classes, they would be the first line treatments. One example is I can share is this hospital system which used integrated decision support system to reduce antibiotic prescribing. So as soon as the doctors tried to attempt to prescribe these antibiotics for what looked like a small viral infection, the system, based on their vitals and health markers, it gently intervened with guidelines and recommendations. And over time, this significantly improved the predictions. Okay, now healthcare produces enormous amount of data in form of unstructured texts like clinical notes, like patient messages, etc. Buried in these texts are the clinical insights. But unless you have time to just dive deep and read each and every word, a lot of it gets lost. This is where natural language processing, or the NLP, comes into play. So, here. So the NLP, what it does, it takes raw text, it cleans that text, it recognizes the entities, and it tries to extract relationships, and then make some structured insights for the clinicians. For example, let's say the doctor's note says, okay, patient denies chest pain but reports occasional shortness of breath. So what would the NLP do is, the pipeline would say that, okay, chest pain present, shortness of breath absent, so forth, and link it to potential conditions like heart failure or kidney failure and so forth. So, but in healthcare, the NLP isn't easy. Words have multiple meanings. Take, for example, the word cold. So is the patient cold as in like chilly, or do they have cold as in like upper respiratory infection? So there are subtle but critical distinctions to it. So think of NLP on a high level as a powerful tool for patient engagement also. Okay, imagine that AI can analyze this for secure patient messages and detect some urgent symptoms. For example, this message, shortness of breath, sitting in the inbox for hours, system can automatically escalate it. So NLP is a huge part. It gives the system the eyes, the ears, and allowing it to understand and act accordingly. Okay, quick time check. All right. So now I'm not sure if you agree with me, but for CRM, data is everything. I would say it is fuel for the cognitive systems. But in healthcare, all this data is scattered, it's messy, and it's distributed across different departments, the different organizations, hospital, labs, patients' apps. It sits everywhere. And traditionally, we have tried to solve this problem by combining everything and bringing this into a giant repository or a giant warehouse, if you will. But that often fails, and it's painfully slow. So solution, enter the data mesh. It is a decentralized concept where each domain, say oncology or cardiology or pediatrics, etc., they own their own respective data as their own product. For example, oncologists are responsible for curating and managing their tumor-related data. Similarly, cardiologists, they manage their own cardiac imaging data. So what's the advantage? The people who know the data best are the ones managing it. Teams can create their own data products without heavy IT intervention. But how would the teams talk with each other? Different departments, how would they communicate? The glue here is interoperability. And this is often done via FHIR, which provides a common language to other data products. So think of it like one big, giant shopping mall wherein you have specialized shops, each run by experts using the same currency and the same language so that the transactions can be smooth. All right. So API first. So healthcare as an ecosystem has multiple stakeholders. You have EHR vendors, Medicare, Medicaid. In Europe, we have different organizations. We have labs, we have imaging systems, we have patients app, portals, etc. And if your underlying architecture, if you cannot integrate with each of these stakeholders, your system fails. And this is where our API first strategy is essential. With this design, every function is exposed to the outer world through the API with clear defined contracts. This means that if in an application there are front end and back end, they can be decoupled. Okay, you can modernize piece by piece, and instead of doing a full overhaul. For example, I'll give you a patient risk API, for example, with exposed endpoints to retrieve, let's say, risk assessments was given to some patients in one of the hospital systems. So the external developers, they access it via the standard way using the RESTful APIs or the GraphQL for doing some flexible querying, or even the WebSockets for real-time updates. The same way that API can power the mobile app for clinicians, or a web dashboard for administrators, or you can also think of voice interfaces for hands-free use. The benefits are huge. Once you expose this, the companies or the individual developers or freelancers, they can build specialized apps on top of our existing API ecosystem, as long as they respect the compliance and the security. So falling back to this old example, the hospital system did just that. They exposed this risk prediction API, and for this, the external developers, they built on very quickly, and they came up with specialized apps which emerged very quickly. Diabetes management app or heart failure monitoring app, etc. They all plugged into that same core API, and they try to benefit from it and generate an ecosystem off of that. So the benefit was the hospital itself, they did not have to build this new ecosystem, but still benefited from this new ecosystem which the external world built for them. All right, now let's talk about edge computing, because in healthcare, not everything can wait for the cloud or be connected 24/7. Imagine we are in a rural clinic with spotty internet, or you are at the bedside with the patient in the ICU where seconds matter. You have to send all the data from all the way to the cloud, process it, wait for the results, and then wait for the results to come back. You might lose valuable time. This scenario is where the edge computing would come into play. We would propose to bring these AI models directly to the point of care devices on the tablets or on the medical devices by the bedsides themselves. And we can use the AI models on these devices directly. And again, I understand that these devices are often resource constrained, so we can use different capabilities here. So one is model compression. So you can leverage, think of leveraging technologies like TensorFlow Lite or Onyx to run big sophisticated models in a compressed way onto these resource constrained devices. And Mayo Clinic, in the case study, they did just that for the sepsis prediction system. They deployed the compressed models directly at the bedside, and instead of waiting for minutes, they reduced that alert system and they brought it down to milliseconds. And that kind of difference can save lives. Second concept, federated learning. So instead of centralizing the patient data from various endpoints, let's say hospital A, hospital B, hospital C, We train the models across these sites, A, B, and C themselves, while the data stays local at the site A or the site B. They do not need to bring at the central data warehouse. So this would preserve privacy. This would enable collaboration across institution without violating regulations and compliance standards there. The third enabler, offline capabilities. So in disaster scenarios, like in rural areas, connectivities, they are often disrupted. So you can work with local models, having in that point of care device, and have the models work on that local system. And whenever required, we can work off of it. So let's take a step back. Now we have all the systems we have integrated. Now what? We have to also look about one of the biggest concerns in the healthcare, which is privacy. On one hand, the patient need to trust that their data is protected. But on the other hand, we need the data. The system needs data to build intelligent models. So how do we balance these two needs? The answer is here. The approach is here. We can leverage differential privacy uh, by adding a controlled statistical noise to the data so that the individual identities are obscured, and the population patterns, they remain as it is. Next is homomorphic encryption. They allow computations to be performed directly on the encrypted data, so that the sensitive information is never exposed to, let's say, site A does not know about any data about site B. Okay. On the similar lines, the multi-party computation. Multiple parties can contribute to encrypted data, and the systems can aggregate the insights without any single party seeing the raw input. So A is sending A1, B is sending B1 data, site C is sending C1 data. And we are all working, and I generate the insights and give it to C. So C will have the data with the insights from A1 and B1 also, but it would not know what was the A1, what were the contents of A1. So these techniques, I agree, they might sound abstract, but they are very practical. So the hospitals are collaborating on these predictive models for population health to keep the patient's data private and still contributing to the shared powerful model. So what is the outcome here? What is the result? The result is trust. It is the win-win situation. Patient, on one hand, they know that their data is not being used recklessly, and the hospitals, they know that they are compliant. Okay, I won't dive too much deep into this example, this case study, but I'll just touch on it on a very high level, both from technical standpoint and from the layman parlance also. So this hospital system that I was talking about, based out of Sacramento, California, they wanted to tackle this problem of 30-day readmission to reduce that, because it was a major cost driver and a quality metric. So they built an intelligent system. What they did was they ingested the data from these 47 different hospital sources. Speaking technically, the structured data went into PostgreSQL database. Unstructured database like notes, doctor prescriptions, they went into MongoDB. For the predictive engine, they leverage multiple models like XGBoost and LSTM networks and clinical rules, and they orchestrated all these good things on the machine learning platform Kubeflow for lifecycle management. And the microservices, they allowed for A/B testings and API gateway. They intervened, they ensured the security with OAuth. But speaking, this was the technology at the back end. But in a layman language, they deployed this model on the edge devices for immediate post-discharge risk assessment. If, let's say, if a patient was flagged as high risk, the context-aware notifications were sent directly to the care team, say like case manager or the nurse practitioner. And they were monitoring the data continuously with Prometheus or the Grafana dashboards, tracking the clinical metrics like the alert accuracy or the system metrics like latency. The result, 23% reductions in readmissions. And people, this is not just a number. This is hundreds or thousands of patients who did not have to come back to hospital. Thousands of lives improved, millions in costs saved. So this is the impact that we are talking about today. So coming to my final slide, I would talk about balance, because as exciting as this is, in my humble opinion, this is not a place for reckless innovation. We need these 5 pillars. We need technical excellence. We need clinical integration for workflows that respect provider needs to enhance their work. We need ethical design for privacy preserving, for bias aware or transparent systems that can preserve the trust, that can earn the trust. We need a regulatory compliance that meet the compliance guidelines for like HIPAA or GDPR without stifling the innovation. And above all, we need the human-centered approach, because behind every data point is a person. Behind every risk score is a patient with a family. And behind every prediction is a clinician who makes life or death decisions. So if we do this right, this would transform the healthcare landscape from being reactive and burdensome to being proactive and intelligent. It will free the clinicians from the weight of data overload and let them focus on what really matters, caring for people. Thank you.
Your microphone, Seme, I think you have. Do you hear me? Hello?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ashwin. So as we expected, so before starting the session, a very exceptional session, especially for all those details and the recommendations in this, let's say, 360 overview of the main challenges that we may have when implementing a CRM solution based on cognitive, let's say, artificial intelligence. So, and to move from the traditional, let's say, way of using the CRM only for storing data or just for getting the data and using it without applying advanced AI techniques. And we know that actually we have multiple platforms, multiple solutions that are related to artificial intelligence that we can use in order to extract and to get insights quickly, effectively from this massive amount of data. And also, what is also interesting with this proposal is that you are dealing with unstructured data, which is also important, especially to analyze the text, NLP capabilities that we can also add to the solutions in order to enhance the capabilities and the effectiveness and the performance of the final result. And all of this is very important and is very interesting. Thank you very much for all those for this presentation and also for all those insights. We really appreciate that. We have a lot of questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
many questions.
Many questions.
Sure.
So Rodrigue, I saw Rodrigue from time to time, so typing,
Yeah.
copying, and pasting the questions in the chat
Yeah,
from the audience. Yes.
to be honest, thank you, of course, Ashmin, for this clear and very informative presentation. And thank you to everyone for your question. Unfortunately, I can take all the question. We have no time to respond to all the questions, so we have selected a few of them to discuss now, but unfortunately, we don't have time to answer them all today. So we will start by the beginning. I don't know if you can see them, Ashwin, in the chat.
Okay. Okay.
You can. I try to put them in the order of your presentation, so can start with the first one. What was this question? It's a very long question. I didn't make a change, but
Okay. So,
yeah,
okay, I see it in the first question. Okay. So,
yeah.
so how can the healthcare organization responsibility detect hidden patterns in the patient data using AI tools while ensuring transparency, clinical relevance, and compliance with regulations like HIPAA, GDPR, and local. Okay. So this is an excellent question. So we have to think about data governance and compliance by design. We have to build. So one example I talked about data mesh. So we can leverage that or federated learning. So keep the data under the control of clinical departments or institutions to reduce the risk or central breaches. We can enable the cross hospital insights without moving the raw data, protecting the patient's privacy. That is one. We can do a responsible pattern detection. We can leverage explainable AI, XAI. So we can leverage tools like Shape or Line to counterfactual explanations to reveal why a model found a certain pattern, for example, and so forth. We can also think about bias and fairness auditing. You can think about subgroup audits to continuously validate the models across demographics, fairness metrics, red flag monitoring, and so forth. And you can also transparency and clinician engagement, like human in the loop validation or integrated clinical dashboards, wherein we present the contextually relevant data via CDS hooks or FHIR, for example, rather than overwhelming the clinicians with raw alerts. And finally, we have a robust security and privacy preserving AI landscape, if you will, having zero trust security, having differential privacy. So the bottom line here would be the healthcare organizations, they can responsibly, they have to detect hidden patterns by combining all of these strategies together, and they can embed within a regulatory compliant and a governance framework. So that is what would be the way to go forward. Okay, so the next question.
Yeah, very question.
Okay,
That's too long question.
okay, so the three pillars. So among the three pillars, microservices, event-driven, and cloud-native designs, which one is usually the most challenging to implement in healthcare? Okay, this is very interesting question. While many technicians, many architects, they think that microservices is toughest in healthcare. The reason I would say is they are dealing with the legacy monolithic or vendor lock-in systems like EHR or clinical systems, which are tightly coupled. Second, I would think of data ownership and semantics based off of that, because they have to clearly demarcate the domain boundaries and the data products around them, wherein the clinical teams, the labs, and others, they currently share messy data, duplicate data sets, and so forth. Transactional complexity. The workflow that requires strong consistency and auditability, like for orders, for medicines, for billings. So they have to be made accountable. They create, so if it is done recklessly, they would create new problems. Like I can think of race problems or distributed transactions or many different complexities. So I would say the practical, we will have to think about practical strategies to succeed, not just technical. It should be technical plus organizational plus compliance. All of them embed together and start small and work incrementally. Do some pilot domains, use domain driven design, do product thinking, leverage robust API and integration strategy. Think of managing the data consistency and how you are going to apply deduplication and data cleansing there. You can think about operation maturity. You can think about compliance, guardrails, legal, if there are any legality that come into play. So multiple things. So microservices, in my opinion, would be the pillar that would deliver the modularity and the agility that would be needed for the cognitive CRM in this AI. But as much as this is organizational and transformational as it is a technical one. All right.
Okay. The third is too short.
Okay, so let us take one.
Yeah, it's about the Paris hospital successfully use Microsoft services.
Okay, so you want me to circle back to that? Okay, so let me just go back again and share my screen to that hospital example. Just give me a moment.
You're welcome.
So I'm just trying to share my screen. So let me know when you see my screen.
Yes, we see it.
Okay,
thank you.
So this Paris hospital system. So what it did was it tried to build a third. The problem was they were trying to tackle this problem of 30-day readmission, and with the goal of reducing the costs and improve the quality. So those two were the important metrics to reduce this 30-day readmission. For example, let's say I check out, I'm discharged from the hospital. What is the likelihood that the patient is readmitted in the system? So how did they leverage the technology? So what they did was, on a very high level, they built an intelligent architecture systems using the principles that we have just discussed. So here they try to integrate the data from 47, ingest the data from 47 different endpoints. So we get the data in structured format, unstructured format. Structured data went into Postgre database. Unstructured data, like the doctor notes, the image itself, they all went into MongoDB. So I'm just speaking technically. So just to give the technical folks also a little bit of taste. They try to leverage the predictive engine, which try to combine multiple models and the technology. They try to leverage fragmented learning. They try to leverage XGBoost, LSTM networks. They try to leverage clinical rules. And all of these models were orchestrated on a machine learning platform, Kubeflow. And what it did was model the lifecycle management for this entire universe for them. And I already mentioned earlier, microservices did for separate groups of people. They did A and B testing for the separate subgroups of people and try to take their results and try to better the system and train the model off of it. And on a very high level, they leveraged API gateway for security. But if I were to speak, this was more in technical terms. But what they tried to do in a layman's language was they deployed these models on the point of POS systems, on the edge devices, the devices like tablets, or the which is the machines which are beeping by the bedside, so that they could get the information right there and then, real time. And as soon as the patient was about to be discharged, one event was triggered, and they would run multiple risk assessment workflows. So after the workflow was run, the insights was generated. Let's say the patient was flagged as high risk, so context aware notifications were sent directly to the care team, to the case managers, or to the nurse. So, and they did all these monitoring. They were done in the Prometheus or the Grafana dashboard. These are very popular dashboards. They collect these metrics for different, the system level metrics and the clinical level metrics also. So with this, what when they try to implement this as a pilot, and they try to do this from the data collected from 2016 onwards, so the result was a very significant reduction in readmission, at 23%, and that was huge saving. So this case really showed a real world impact of the cognitive architecture, and it really showed that it is actually working today, and it's not just a theory. Right? Okay. How many minutes do we have? Can we take?
We are close to the end. Maybe we can take one last question. We'll
All right.
let
Which
you
one?
choose. We'll let you choose. If I
Okay.
have to take it, I will take maybe the last one.
The last one. Okay, let me go there. Okay, in healthcare, should the predictive models, whether managed with governance? Okay. Okay. So what I would think here is yes. The answer is yes, on a very high level, but but both predictive models should be used routinely to for the known risks, where the evidence or the governance, they support the action, and we can leverage powerful tools to discover some unknown risks. But discovering unknown risks, they require very strict guardrails. You need to work within your boundaries. You need to work within your governance framework or the controlled deployment pattern, so that these discoveries, if we are doing something, they do not actually harm a large group of patients in the real world, or they does not trigger any bullwhip effect, if you will, right? So I would think, in my mind, we have to run in a pilot in a one department, uh, in a healthcare ready framework that really explains that when each uses a use case. So it would really depend on the use case. So you have to clearly know what principles to apply. You need to have the clarity on purpose. Whether we have to run this as an operational model, or as an explanatory or investigative model, or then we also have to think about documentation or provenance, right, which maintains model card or data lineage or training the cohorts. Okay, for such situations, I would think that it is paramount to have humans in the loop. To every exploratory signal, they must be reviewed, so by the clinicians or the person in charge or the review board itself, before any patient level actions. And then we have to continuously train the model, right? You have to control the discovery pipeline. You have to have separate sandboxes. I mean, for low risk patients, you can try, okay, we can go a step further, we can experiment this versus a very high risk patient group, so far and so forth. Multiple practical things come into play, like ethics or legal piece come into play. But again, we have to think about from a 360-degree perspective. So we have to treat model-driven discovery as a hypothesis generation, and not with like this is like a source of truth, if you will. We should favor conservative or transparent or clinician centric decision paths when evolving discoveries to interventions. We must invest in processes, we must invest in governance, we must invest in, I think, so monitoring or clinician education, so that the model itself becomes very self reliant, it becomes more accurate. So these are my thoughts, what I would think on a very high level.
Your mic, Rodrigo, we can't hear you.
I think it's okay now. Yeah, I was saying we now reached the end of today's session. Unfortunately, as I was saying previously, we couldn't address every question, but we truly appreciate your engagement and curiosity. A big thank to you, Ashwin and Seme also, for sharing such a valuable insight, and to all of you joining us. Before we officially close, I will give the mic to Seme and the closing word to Ashwin.
Thank you very much, Rodrigue and Ashwin, too, for being part of this session for today. We know that the topic is covering this topic in only 1 hour or one session hour isn't very easy. So there is a lot of, let's say, subtopics to investigate, to consider, to talk to. So that's why Ashwin, that would be a great pleasure for us to invite you in other sessions. So anytime, if you have any new topics, or if you want to develop more this topic to present it in another session, that will be, we will be very pleased to have you. For our upcoming sessions, to share all those insights. And once again, so thank you very much for being part of this presentation, for your involvement, and we really appreciate that. So closing words, as Rodrigue said, for Ashwin, if you have something to add.
No, thank you, Seme. Thank you, Rodrigue, for having me here and having me speak today on your platform.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed sharing my insights from my experiences, and I look forward to having more of such sessions. I try to bring in more topic, more insight, and also learn from your previous sessions, which I saw. They are informative, and I would look forward to more of such sessions.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. So for
Okay.
all of our audience, so the recording of this session will be available on YouTube, will also be available on all the other online platforms that we have. So don't hesitate to connect and to review the topic. And of course, we will continue providing you with more topics with the newest technologies. So if you have any proposal or if you have any interest in such events, as a key speaker, you are welcome to join us. You are welcome to join the community and to share your thoughts and experience with us. Thank you very much for all of you. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Rodrigue, and see you next week. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Seme. See you next.